Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me on October the 6th, live from Las Vegas, late at night. Appreciate it. Today we saw something relatively important, I think, for overall usage of the cloud and also from a data privacy perspective, overall use of SaaS software perspective. And what happened today is that the European High Court, or the European Court of Justice of the High Court of the EU, I think that's the right name, invalidated a very important agreement called the Safe Harbor Agreement, which basically was saying that European data can be stored in US data centers as long as certain data privacy things are making sure or being ensured, and that was fine, which was a huge reality for even the largest internet properties out there. The problem which has happened, an Austrian sued in Ireland, interesting combination, saying that Facebook validated data privacy based on some of the revelations that came from Mr. Snowden. The Irish data privacy agency said, no, there's no reason to do that because Facebook is supporting the Safe Harbor Agreement and or certified for Safe Harbor, and with that there's no base for that. The gentleman kept suing, went all the way to the High Court, the ultimate instance, and the High Court invalidated the Safe Harbor. What means effectively that any US company having European data in the US right now is violating that, or the Safe Harbor on which they've been operating is no longer valid, is no longer usable. And de facto, it means two things to do. Either you've put in place some model agreements, which are basically the exception agreements for every location where you might be doing business that allow that. That's possible, but that's a lot of work. Or it means that you need to find or get your data into a European data center. And not only doesn't mean that the data can be there, you also make sure that nobody based in the US has access to it, because ultimately the fear and the reason for this is that the US government might be spying under the Patriot Act on the European data, and European people and business may not have given their consent to that, right, obviously. So what does it mean? It means a win for data privacy from a European perspective. How much that's worth, we'll see. The downside of it is certainly that it will be much, much harder for smaller and medium businesses to do business, right? If you have an e-commerce website and you're maybe doing this yourself, running it yourself, you will have, if you operate globally or market into the EU, you will have local data in your own data center. If you're SaaS-based, you will have to check what your SaaS provider has from a portability perspective or from availability perspective. And many of local data center providers who support SMB companies do not have that, right? So it's also harder for software companies. So I think longer term, from an innovation perspective, will be harder for them to go there. So the rich are getting richer to a certain point. Whoever has data centers already in Europe is going to do well. One example is Google. Google's going to expand their Belgium-based data center in order to cope with that. I'm here in Las Vegas at Amazon's reInvent conference. Amazon is actually not so unhappy about this rolling because they have significant data center presence in Ireland and most recently in Germany, Germany being the biggest instance right now from a growth perspective even. So, but bad news for smaller vendors, bad news for smaller businesses who now have to deal with additional complexity. So the hope is that there's going to be a new way to negotiate the Safe Harbor Agreement, but you can see how hard these things are. If you look up, like I was doing preparing for this, on the EU website, which countries you're allowed to transport the data because it was invalidated, that website is now dead. It can't be found, so you can look it up. If you look it up on the US side, everything is still hunky-dory. The Safe Harbor Agreement is, according to the Trade Department's, I think it was Trade Department's website, is still there and still running, right? So it shows how long governments take to even catch up in the 21st century on rulings, right? The whole thing is back from the late late 90s of the EU data directive. So something to watch out if you do business with Europe and you're a US-based business or US-based vendor and you don't have any data center presence in Europe. And if you have data center presence in Europe, you have to make sure that there's no access from anybody, from personnel out of the US, unless you've signed the model agreements with the specific data center locations you might be operating in Europe. So very much complexity, having the big guys who handle this anyway. Personally, I think not a good decision. Win for data privacy, certainly. Data privacy is important, but it makes everything a little harder for everybody. And if small companies can't do well business, it's not good in my personal view for overall innovation and competitiveness. So these these companies will unfortunately suffer. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Have a good week, and time to learn more about data privacy, residency, and compliance. Thanks for watching.